What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to LTL Podcast. It's August 2nd, 2023. This is episode 47, and we're going to talk about Brian Kohberger this evening. As you know, today was a hearing in the Kohberger camp, but we haven't seen or heard any news on that yet. I literally was scrubbing the internet up until about 2 minutes ago, and I just couldn't find anything on as far as a case update as to what happened in those hearings today. But as we know, the defense over the last week put out a motion to throw out the indictment, and now it's looking like that Kohberger's camp is filed against the motion to compel the alibi, and also it looks like they want another stay. So we're going to get into all of that this evening through the program here, and I have some videos that we're going to pull up. Of course, I always love referencing Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, obviously because he's an expert lawyer and he can kind of break down as to what's happening in these cases. I've been literally trying to get him on the podcast, even just to do a 20-minute spot with me, but he just hasn't been returning any of my messages. So I'm going to keep plugging away. I know he's very, 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 very busy between his channel and his cases, but I'm going to continue to try to do that. We really value his insight here on this channel. We really value what he can bring to the YouTube platform, because he can break down all those details of, things like me. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. I can look things up and try to piece things together, but he knows the law and he knows how to read through these documents accurately. And that's why we use his segments here on this program. So Peter, hope you don't mind. We love to reference you here, play some of your videos and get educated through your videos. So we're going to do here first is that I have a video here from the Law and Crime Network. It is Brian Kohberger's defense team seeks to throw out indictments. So let's get caught up a little bit with that as we go through the program here. All right.
Mr. Kohberger, do you understand the charge in count one?
Yes.
Do you understand the maximum penalty?
Yes.
Brian Kohberger formally asked the judge to dismiss the indictment charging him with the murders of 4 University of Idaho students, as prosecutors asked the judge to bar him from presenting an alibi at trial. Thanks for joining us here at Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy. There's a lot of legal wrangling and maneuvering taking place in Brian Kohberger's capital murder case. He has pleaded not guilty to the November 2022 murders of Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. His attorneys had previously indicated that they would challenge the indictment. The likelihood of Judge tossing the indictment is very slim. So in the alternative, Kohberger's lawyers are asking that the case be sent back to a lower court for a preliminary hearing. That's a hearing where prosecutors call witnesses to show there's probable cause that the defendant committed the crime and should go to trial. The defense sometimes benefits from a preliminary hearing as they get to question state's witnesses before trial. Since the grand jury basically does the same thing, determines probable cause, prosecutors in the case decided to go that route because grand juries hear evidence in secret, not in open court, and the defense is not there. The prelim in this case had been scheduled at the end of June, but that was canceled since prosecutors used a grand jury instead. But Kohberger's attorneys claim the Idaho Constitution requires a higher standard than probable cause for a grand jury to indict. They argue the standard is actually beyond a reasonable doubt, as it is at trial. Later in the filing, Kohberger's attorneys acknowledged the Idaho Supreme Court later determined probable cause is what's required for an indictment, but they argue the court didn't have the right to change the legal standard. I asked criminal defense attorney James Bogan about Kohberger's argument.
I think that's what you'd call a boilerplate motion, Anjanette. In death penalty cases, usually the defense will file well over 50 motions to cover every little angle. And this is one of those things. I think they're also trying to question say that the the grand jury selection process and the questionnaire were not proper either. Those are things that tend to be routinely raised in motions in death penalty cases, more to try to cover the record.
What do you think the likelihood of this motion succeeding is? Because they're asking, they're asking the judge, if you don't dismiss the indictment, we want you to send it back instead for a preliminary hearing. They, I think, very much wanted a preliminary hearing because that would have given them an opportunity to cross-examine state's witnesses ahead of trial.
I don't think that this motion is going to go anywhere. In most cases, defense attorneys, we love having a preliminary hearing so we can flush out certain things with witnesses, pin them down about certain points. And of course, you always get a transcript of it. So when these same witnesses testify at trial, sometimes you can go back and go, hey, you really said this.
The issue about whether Kohberger will present an alibi at trial has also come up. Last week, Kohberger's lawyers had responded to a demand from prosecutors that they provide information about Kohberger's alibi, should he decide to present one at trial. His lawyers said they're still investigating and preparing for trial and plan to elicit testimony about Kohberger's alibi through cross-examination of state's witnesses and experts. Philadelphia defense attorney Fred Perry told me recently, presenting an alibi defense is risky.
The presentation of an alibi defense from a criminal defense attorney standpoint is extremely difficult. Once you start the process of trying to have to prove something, the burden kind of shifts, because in a criminal trial, a defendant is presumed to be innocent and has no burden of proof. It's the government has to, prove their case. Once you start trying to prove an alibi, you better be able to prove that your client was in a spaceship circling Mars at the time of the incident. Otherwise, the government's going to punch a lot of holes in your case. It's a very, very difficult process.
Prosecutors filed a response to Kohberger and said his attorneys are not complying with the rules about providing information about an alibi. Prosecutors.
The thing that everybody has to understand in this case, all these motions by the defense is to slow things down. They're just trying to slow the clock down. And that's probably for several reasons. One, we've talked about this last night. 51 terabytes of digital evidence has been turned over to the defense team from the prosecution. And I put that in perspective last night during my show. Let's give a comparison. I had the video today that I dropped. If you haven't seen it, 51 terabytes of information, of evidence collected in just a few months. Where if you look at Rex Human's case, only 8 terabytes were turned over. And that's a 13-year investigation that's been going on. Now, I understand there's probably some litigating factors in that. The sense of that, the way that our video cameras record now, files could be bigger. But information is information. And it's a hell of a lot of information. It's a hell of a lot of evidence in the Kohberger case. So that's what I always talk about too, is that, get a lot of people out there that talk about the lack of evidence in this case. We haven't even seen all of it yet. And, and then this motion of standing silence with the alibi. I'm sorry. If I knew that I was not responsible for a quadruple homicide and I have an alibi, I would want the public to know that. I would want people to know that. But standing silent and then saying, oh, well, we're going to get our alibi when we get state's witnesses up on the stand so we can form our alibi. We're going to poke holes in their story. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. We'll keep playing on here.
Right that Kohberger's defense is required to provide the specific place or places at which the defendant claims to have been at the time of the burglary and homicides in this case, along with the names and addresses of all witnesses upon whom the defendant intends to rely to establish such alibi.
The state is actually correct here. In Idaho, it's different from Ohio. In Idaho, within 10 days after a written demand by the prosecutor for any alibi witnesses and things like that, the defense has to either provide it within those 10 days or at a time that's set by the judge. So it looks to me like the defense might be looking to try to get the judge to set an alternate timeline, saying, hey, we need more time to investigate before we can commit to anything.
Prosecutors want Judge to order the defense to turn over the alibi information or tell them they can't present evidence that Kohberger has an alibi at trial. Finally, the defense is asking the court again to stay or delay the proceedings. They claim the process of selecting grand jurors was flawed because of the number that responded to subpoenas, and they believe that there were also issues with the questionnaire.
I was actually shocked that it was scheduled for trial that soon, because death penalty cases, there's so much stuff to go through. Typically, that looks like a trial date that's too fast for the attorneys to really do their due diligence. They might be. I think that's what they might be doing. I just find it kind of, it strikes me, Anjanette, is that they're trying to get a stay on the trial while at the same time they're trying to keep asserting a speedy trial rights. You can't have it both ways, in my opinion.
All right. Let's look at JRL. You know, he's going to reference, let me do this first. You know, that it's strange. It's very, very strange. And I talked about this in my interview with Jennifer Coffindaffer. And I talked about the hyperpolarization of this case, where you have two groups of people. And I really don't find many people in the middle. There are people that are just dead set that this guy is guilty, or there are people that are just dead set that this guy, I mean Kohberger, was randomly plucked out of society, this lost soul that moved from Pennsylvania to go out to WSU to continue his studies, but somehow, in some form or fashion, got on the police radar, and they knew of this guy for months and months and months, and surveyed him and knew his movements. Then miraculously, they tracked him down and secretly got his DNA and hid his DNA away in sealed containers from all air around it that cannot get in to penetrate this DNA. And then mysteriously, the police or some other entity go into 1122 King Road and cause a quadruple homicide. And then their way to get out of this is to take a knife sheath and rub this obscure person that no one has ever heard of in their entire lives DNA on a button snap of a knife sheath and lay it next to two victims that are brutally murdered on a bed, and then walk out. That's what people believe. I got into a Twitter war about it today. You know, and I don't like to argue with people on Twitter because it's just going to keep going in a circle and a circle and a circle because everybody needs to get the last word on there. But I literally was in a conversation today about what I just talked about. I'm like, you have to be on fucking Pluto. Like, you have to be on fucking Pluto to think that. It's statistically impossible for that to happen. Statistically impossible for that to happen. Name me any other story that has ever happened in, or any other case. It's statistically impossible. All right, let's look at JRL. See what he had to say about this. He's gonna reference an article here from the Statesman, but I really literally don't want to flick them $1. So he's gonna break down the article anyway. All right, JLL investigates, smashing the algorithm, boots on the ground reporting. Got to give it up to the guy.
Jonathan Lee Riches investigates. I am covering the Moscow, Idaho Brian Kohberger case. Brian Kohberger's defense is facing an uphill battle in getting.
Now, let me pause this and get to it. Caterbug says, do you think they're trying to say the cops committed the crime, or they just planted the sheath when the call came in after? I think it's both. I think it's both. I think some people think that the cops did this crime and just framed this obscure guy out of nowhere, somehow got his DNA somewhere, took the knife sheath, rubbed it on it, and placed it next to the bed to say, we did it, but it was not us, but it was this guy right here. How the fuck can that happen? How can that happen? How can that happen? The amount of conspiracy in that is insane. I mean, it would be on other worlds. I don't know. I can't figure it out. Like, the insane theories around this. Oh, well, it's me here. The sheath. This guy was from nowhere. They just, they picked him out. How? No one can tell me how. No one has a clear theory. When I asked them, how did the police frame this? Well, they just did, they somehow got his DNA and they just did it. But how? How did they do it? How did they do it? Where did they get it? Where did they get his DNA from? How did they find this obscure guy out of nowhere and just grab him out of society and say, that's the guy? That's the guy we're going to pin it on. God damn it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Their indictment dismissed. The Brian Kohberger indictment, the defense is trying to get it dismissed, and legal experts in Idaho are saying that is an uphill battle. Retired Supreme Court justices out of Idaho saying it is an uphill battle, literally an impossible battle to win. Check this report here right now. New article by the Idaho Statesman. Brian Kohberger's attorneys want indictment dismissed. It's an uphill battle, experts say. A motion to dismiss the indictment that accuses Brian Kohberger of murdering 4 University of Idaho students filed last week would have far-reaching implications for the way grand juries indict people in Idaho if it succeeds. 2 retired Idaho Supreme Court justices told the Idaho Statesman. Kohberger's defense attorneys argued in the motion posted Thursday that grand jurors were incorrectly given a lower than necessary standard of proof to indict him. The state court system announced in May that the grand jury for the case indicted him with 4 counts of first-degree murder connection with the fatal stabbings in November. At the time, Kohberger was a graduate student at Pullman. As we know, the victims were Kaylee Madison.
I'll pull up the tweet in a minute, and you can see this argument going back. Well, not argument, debate. It's insane what these people think. I'll just bring the tweet up.
Jay Loxton, chief deputy of litigation for the Kootenai County Public Defender, said in a motion that the Idaho Constitution and state law say a grand jury standard of proof should be beyond a reasonable doubt. If Kohberger's defense team succeeds in the motion, retired Supreme Court Chief Justice Jim Jones told the Statesman in an email they would overturn long-standing Idaho law regarding the standard that must be met to support a grand jury indictment, making the new standard beyond a reasonable doubt, not the current lower standard of probable cause. But Jones said it is unlikely Kohberger's attorneys will win. I agree. It's really hard to flub a grand jury, he said in a phone interview. There's not much you can do to screw up the process. I don't think this has any chance of success. Yeah. Loxton argued that the Idaho statute states the grand jury ought to find an indictment when all the evidence before them taken together, if unexplained or contradicted, would, in their judgment, warrant a conviction by a trial jury. Former Attorney General David Leroy, now a Boise criminal defense lawyer, agreed with Loxton's interpretation. It's a quirky situation that has lain undetected in Idaho criminal.
So Jaded Ghost says, from what it seems, Moscow is a pretty corrupt city. Okay, so I'm probably thinking that you think that Kohberger was set up. Please explain to us in the chat. I would love to hear from you all. How did he get set up? Type it in the chat for us. I need to know the story. This is what you guys all do. You just throw like little breadcrumbs out there, but you don't give any detail to your argument. You just say, "Oh, he was set up," or it seems like Moscow is just a super corrupt city. Tell me the corruption. Tell me how he gets set up. Tell me. Please explain it to us, because that's what I need to hear. See, I always get these breadcrumb stories, but no one ever can give us the details of how it happened. How from start to finish has this happened? Tell me how. How did he get set up? How was he plucked from society? The one guy in the world. This is the guy they're going to hone in on, and they're going to grab him. They're going to pull him out, pluck him from society, frame him, put the sheath on the bed, walk out, laugh their asses off because this guy's going to go to jail for the rest of his life. Please explain it to me. We want to hear it. That's the thing. I just want to hear it. Please tell me, what is the corruption? What is the corruption? How did this get planted? How did this guy get framed? Please tell us. Explain it to us. I need to hear it. I need to hear something, because I just hear breadcrumbs all the time.
Procedure for more than a century. Joe Horton, a retired Supreme Court justice, told the Statesman that the statute, which does not use the phrase reasonable doubt, is ambiguous. The state constitution doesn't offer much clarity about the standard of proof issue either, he said. Horton said the motion will be an uphill battle to win. A successful ruling would essentially result in the end of grand juries in Idaho without new legislation, he said, because it would make it more difficult to charge someone through the process and require the presentation of more evidence. Even Logston acknowledged that the succeeding of the motion would be a challenge. The defense recognizes that the whole of modern jurisprudence on this issue is against it, as well as at least one founding father of the state, he said in a motion. But Logston framed the motion as something that would help others, too, by overturning a tragic and unconstitutional misinterpretation of the grand jury indictment standard in Idaho. So, a uphill battle, pretty much impossible battle. You would knock out the whole grand jury process.
Okay, cool. He answered. I just want to see that. It's not like they have his DNA. They have touch DNA. And if the knife sheath was found under one of the victims and the supposed bloody scare scene, how would they be able to get the DNA off her? Okay, so tell me how his touch DNA got on that knife sheath on the bed next to those girls. Tell me how he did it. How did it happen? That's what we want to know. And I appreciate your answering, because I think it's great. You're putting yourself out there for the chat. And I think it's cool that you're answering. But tell me, how did the possession of this knife sheath get from Brian Kohberger's hands, put on a shelf somewhere, hidden away, and we know that he touched it? Then we're going to go in, the four of us are going to run in there and cause this quadruple homicide, and then just gently place the knife sheath on the bed and walk out. And he's framed. Tell me how that happened. Who did it? Who did it? That's what we want to know. Who did it? This is good. Who did it? Who did it then?
Do you believe that they could get the indictment dismissed or not? Let me know what you think.
That did it.
An uphill battle.
Drug dealers.
Brian Kohberger's defense is facing an uphill battle. Do you think it's an uphill battle, or do you think it's a downhill battle that they'll be able to get the indictment dismissed? I think it's literally impossible.
Who are the drug dealers? Who are the druggies? Who did it? Who's the drug dealers? Let us know. It's a supposed drug house, and he did drugs. So it comes down to drugs. Okay. All right. All right. Let me show you this this Twitter war today. It was pretty hilarious, actually. So I put a tweet out here today. Okay. 8 terabytes of digital evidence collected over a 13-year investigation in the Long Island serial killer case. 51 terabytes of digital evidence collected over a few months collected in the Idaho 4 Brian Kohberger case. That should give you some point of perspective if you are doubting the lack of evidence in the Kohberger case. And then I just kind of tweeted along with that is 5 terabytes, a lot of storage. And then it just says 5 terabytes hard drive can hold up to an estimated 83,000 MP3 music files, 1,250 full-length movies, and 160,000 digital photos, which is ample storage for most or average users. So that was about, what, 7 o'clock this morning? Right away. 51 terabytes of garbage, it seems. So I tweeted back and said, oh, that's right. It was Professor Plum in the library with the candlestick. And then Misty Blue came back and said, maybe it was the roomies that had the 8 hour along with their mates to clean it up, create stories, and be treated like angels. So there's that. And then I said, well, it's not like law enforcement has been investigating this since November 13th. Don't you think someone else would have been arrested by now? Oh, wait, you probably wear a tinfoil hat. So logic in this case got thrown out the window a long time ago. And then she responded back, you and your like can spout off the tinfoil hat theories all you want, but I'd rather that than sheep following the mainstream. It's always the sheep. They're following the mainstream media, ridiculous narrative of any day of the week. Keep playing to your audience, dude. I'll stick with using my brain. I was gifted. Whew. She's gifted. I better start using my brain. I need to use my brain. I wonder if like every person that gets arrested, that these people always think like it's a conspiracy, like even if they had literally video of someone being like shot, killed, murdered, whatever, killing someone else, to go, oh, no, couldn't have done it. Nope. It's not them. Nope. Didn't do it. Nope. Not around. Wasn't there. Nope. Couldn't have done it. I think these are the type of people that it's like, what is it? The 4 or 5 year old, when you reach in the cookie jar and you eat the cookies and you have the cookie all over your face and you go, did you eat all the cookies? And they go, no, I didn't eat the cookies, but you have the cookie all over your face. We got a couple other people. This speaks volumes to me in the opposite direction you are going. Garbage in, garbage out. 1 terabyte of digital evidence collected over a few months, collected in the Idaho Bryan case. This should give you some perspective. You lacked out evidence in the Kohberger case. We'll see. That's all shit. Moscow Police Department collected since day one. All this is useless tips, photos. It's just all useless evidence. It's all useless. And the interviews conducted, all that shit they downloaded from those students' phone, all the reports, apparently precious little has evidentially value. It's all garbage, damn it. It's all garbage. I feel like Vince McMahon from WWE. Or well-known strategy to overwhelm the defense with piles of nothing so they can't find the important pieces. Time to consider there is a mess of corruption in the area among these legs of the spider. Yes, well said. It's all corruption. Everything is always corruption. It's all corruption. And these are the people that will go out and fucking vote for big government. That's the funny thing about it. All right, let's see what Peter Tragos has to say about this. We'll get it all straightened out from Peter. Peter is our saver. All right, let's talk about the motion to compel, the alibi. Let's see what he has to say about this. Peter, take it away.
What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. It's always fun to be back on a Monday, hanging out with you guys, talking about these cases. It's been a crazy busy day. I've gotten a lot of messages and questions specifically on Lori Vallow Daybell's sentencing. So that is a video I'm going to do. I haven't finished watching all of it yet. So that is a video I'm going to do, and it's going to post later tonight. So anybody that's interested in that, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss out on my thoughts there. She makes a statement, which is very interesting. And legally, the angles that it creates and what it does as part of the sentencing process is really interesting, and the judge's comments on that.
Yes.
So that's number one. But we are here today to talk about this motion to compel the defendant's alibi. And this is a very interesting filing by the state in the Bryan Kohberger case because it gives us a little insight into the difference.
Everything in life is not always a gray area. Some things can be black and white. Some things can be black and white. Everything is not gray. When we look at things, it's not always gray.
Is on how a prosecutor and a criminal defendant litigate cases, what they're held to, what their standards are, what deadlines mean. I'm going to talk about how it works on the civil side as well with what we deal with and some frustrating parts about it, but why it kind of is the way it is. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. And if you're still interested in the Kohberger content, hit that like button for me. It really helps for everybody else that wants to see this content. And speaking of content, do me a favor. If you haven't already, go subscribe to our Lawyer You Know in Shorts channel, because we're trying to build that up and drop some day in the life stuff, drop some Be a Lawyer stuff. Some of those short clips I do when an order comes out or a verdict comes down, we're going to post it on there. So make sure you go subscribe to that, please. Please. Okay, let's get to it. Let's read this motion to compel together. And it's interesting that it is a motion to compel, right? Because they already have demanded the alibi, which follows the statute and tracks the statute exactly what they're supposed to do. And you only file a motion to compel if the other side does not do something you believe legally they have to do, and you are asking the court to force them to do it. So that's what's happening here. This is the motion to compel, and then in parentheses, notice of defense or alibi, of alibi, or alternatively to bar certain evidence, meaning if they do not provide the notice that the law says they have to provide.
Let's logically think here. I'm going to pause. They've been investigating this case since day one. And it's constantly being investigated. Do you not think that if there was someone else involved, they would have been arrested by now? Do you not think that? They know all these people. They know Emma Bailey. They know Dylan Mortensen. They know Bethany Funk. They've talked to all those frat guys. They know Jack. They know Adam. I don't know who else you want me to say. Murphy, they know the fucking dog. They've probably talked to him. I'm being serious. I'm trying to talk you all down. Do you not think that someone else would have been arrested by now? I'm being serious. Why is there only one person that's sitting in jail? Oh, because you don't think his partner's not going to give him up, or he's not going to give up his partner? Do you not think they don't know the list of names of people that have come and gone out of that house? It's a pretty small area. A lot of people know pretty much everybody in and around that area. Whew.
Then
I'm trying to help you.
let's ban that evidence. Let's bar it. Let's not allow it to come in at all. All right. Comes now. The state of Idaho, by and through Latah County prosecuting attorney, and respectfully moves this court for an order compelling the defendant to
For Christ's sakes, you have Peter Trago saying, I think they have the right guy.
comply fully with Idaho Code 19519 and ICR 12.1 to provide the state with a notice of an alibi that may be offered herein. Said notice to include. Okay. So when we read Kohberger's response to that demand for alibi, we said things like, is this really complying? Is he really answering? Is he really giving an alibi? It sounds like he's not giving an alibi, but kind of leaving the door open. And I said, sometimes criminal defendants are allowed to do that because we want to make sure that their process is fair. So to me, it was an interesting filing by Kohberger. But then we get this from the state. Compel them, judge. Force them to follow the law and the rules. Here's what it needs to include, which theirs did not. Okay. The specific place or places at which the defendant claims to have been at the time of the burglary and homicides in this case. So at the very least, if Kohberger in his own statement, in his filing, they said, well, he has the right to remain silent, but he also has the right to testify. And we're saying he still may do that. We're going to show that he wasn't there through cross-examination. Okay, that's fine. But where was he? That's the major question. Where was he? You have to tell them where he was, because if they can then go and prove that he was not there, that is why the state needs to be put on notice as to where Kohberger says he was, because they have the right to then go disprove his alibi if they want to. Number two, what else should it include? The names and addresses of all witnesses upon whom the defendant intends to rely to establish such alibi. And again, we saw this in Lori Vallow's notice of alibi. We did see this before. Kohberger didn't have any. This one's a little easier to me. I think if he does not provide witnesses and he does not provide their contact information, then he can't call them to testify about an alibi. I think the court can rule on that, although we'll see if they're going to be able to give the state specifically what they want. Let me hit a couple questions here. Joanne, I am confused. Why would he not offer an alibi? I have been away for a few days.
He didn't have one.
So he didn't not offer an alibi. He didn't produce the place that he was or the names and addresses, but instead he said he's going to prove his alibi through cross-examination. And if he wants to testify, he still reserves the right to testify about that alibi. Trendy said Lori Vallow showed no remorse with her statement. That is sickening. She doesn't feel bad about taking their lives. I will reserve my statements on Lori Vallow and that sentencing for tonight's video. So stay tuned and check that out. And welcome to all the new members here. All right. As the court file reflects, the state filed its request for discovery disclosure alibi demand on May 23rd and served the defense the same day, which again kicks into the fact.
I mean, listen, I'm gonna pause this, and I know. Oh, you pause the video. I don't care. It's my show. Listen, if I'm facing a quadruple homicide and I've been sitting in jail for the last 6 to 8 months, and I had an opportunity to put an alibi out there and say, hey, this is who I was with. These are the names and addresses. That was this time I was with them. Look, facing the death penalty, I'd probably speak up and say something. Yeah, I probably would. So let me ask the question this. If you think that Bryan Kohberger has been framed, why has he not been screaming from his cell? I have been framed, getting stuff out into the media, disrupting court when he's gone, or whatever, anything that it takes. I'm sorry. If I was an innocent man, I would be screaming at the top of my fucking lungs. I did not do this. Here is my witnesses. Here's the phone numbers, the addresses, the times, the dates that I was there. Here's some receipts of things that I bought out of that area. Here's my plane tickets. I was in Hawaii, whatever it may be. Why have we not heard any of this? He's just going to sit there now and go through a trial and not say anything against a quadruple homicide? You're insane to think that. You're insane.
Fact that the defense has to then respond, and they got an extension on that response,
I have that effect
which
sometimes,
most of us
Terry.
remember because we talked about it. The party subsequently stipulated to extend the statutory time for the defendant to provide notice of an alibi and comply with Idaho codes. On July 24th,
Listen, I know a lot of people, they don't like me because the way that I swing. But look at the evidence, and my interpretation of it is it's very strong against Kohberger. Now, again, I will put this out there because everybody go, you always say this stuff. You always say he's guilty, and you say he's guilty. Bryan Kohberger, as of right now, is innocent until proven guilty, and he will go through court and get the due process. But I have a First Amendment right to think the way that I think, and I think that the evidence is strong. Sorry, I just do.
which was the extended date it was
I can
due.
have that
The
opinion.
defendant filed a notice of defendant's response to the state's alibi demand. This document does not comply with the rule in that it does not specify a place or places at which the defendant claims to have been at the time of the offenses herein, nor does it provide names and addresses of witnesses upon whom the defendant intends to rely. That is correct. It did not. And that's why they're specifically asking for it now, because it did not comply with the rule. It did not tell them where he was, and it did not tell them who the witnesses were. So that's a problem. You've got to comply with the rules. The state recognizes the defendant has a Sixth Amendment constitutional right to call witnesses in his or her own defense. However, as noted in both of these cases, the defendant's right to call witnesses in his or her defense is not unfettered, and the state has a legitimate interest in obtaining a timely and complete discovery response from the defendant. And this is from the Juarez case. So basically, the defendant says, Judge, we've got a right to put on a defense. If we find a witness that has an alibi, they can call him. And for the most part, that's going to come in, regardless of what this motion says. If later the defense is like, hey, we have this really important witness we have to put in, it's going to be really hard for a judge to not allow that witness to be called. But the state may have a legitimate argument when they're saying specifically for an alibi, for time and place, where was he? To me, they have a decent argument at least that if they're going to call witnesses, they have to give that information to the state beforehand. And what we don't want to happen is for right before trial, them to provide all these witnesses and then the state to have to say, wait, judge, we have a right to depose these witnesses because the defense waited and did this here and violated the rules. Now we have to ask for a continuance and violate a speedy trial. That's not fair. And I think what the judge can do within the judge's discretion is say, defense, you created this delay. You created this problem. If they wait, they had to do it by July 24th. They didn't do it. So if they wait, and that necessitates the state having to depose these witnesses.
I don't think that's it, Jessica. I really think that they think this guy is set up. They are so stuck on this drug and police corruption theory. That's what they're stuck on. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. What? And that's the thing is like, I looked at all these channels over the last close to almost a year that has gone on about this shit. And look, I may be fucking wrong. I may be wrong, but I'm going to tell you this. If I am wrong and there's evidence that comes out that says, hey, this guy was no way around there and these three people did it, and there's enough strong evidence to do it, to say that, or just even at least the fact to say that this guy wasn't even fucking here. He was in Timbuktu. Then I will come on air and admit I was fucking wrong. But, I look at these channels that have put out the weirdest fucking shit about this case. And I'm like, are you going to come on? How are you going to portray this to your audience if you're wrong? You're going to come on and say, hey, we were wrong? I doubt it. I literally think that if this goes to trial and this guy gets convicted, they will sit here. Some of these channels will sit here and go on and on and on and on about how there's no way possible this could have happened. And I'm going to tell you right now, the biggest day in court that I'm waiting for right now is that opening statement from the state. The opening statement from the state. I want to know everything. It eats at me every single day as to what happened in that house, how it got to that point. Eats at me every single day. It's crazy. It's crazy. Need to know. Just need to know. Got to know.
I think that could potentially be an involuntary waiver of Brian Kohberger's speedy trial by the defense. We'll see if that ends up happening. Also, just a little side note, in civil cases, similar to criminal cases, when extensions are granted and both sides agree, usually you would think, and that would indicate that within that extended period of time, you are going to get answers. That's why you're giving them more time. So when they still don't answer, even after you give them extended time, it is so frustrating when one side does not play by the rules, does not do what they know they are supposed to do. It is incredibly frustrating. It happens in our cases all the time, but in the interest of justice, judges don't just throw out cases when that happens. Judges don't just punish criminal defendants or stomp on their constitutional rights because they missed a deadline or because they gave a weird, vague answer to the alibi. Because they're right. They're allowed to cross-examine witnesses. They're allowed, the defendant's allowed to testify that he wasn't there. Still allowed to do that. But this is more for, and as we talked about the whole time, here is video evidence. Here's a key card. Here's a witness. If you have specific evidence.
Listen, I would rather be true to my audience and true to the case, stick to the files, try to give as much facts as we can, form our opinions based on the facts that we know through those legal documents. I would rather be true to that than something go off on this tangent and start spilling all this conspiracy over the internet. I can't feel good about that. I can't feel good in the sense of the way that these victims, the way that, you know, to feel consciously good and go to bed at night, putting stuff out there about these victims. I can't do it. I'm just not that type of person, you know, and it comes down to a lot of this about money, subs, likes, clicks, views, because what sells, you know, conspiracy sells, sex sells, you know, dirty, you know, that stuff, corruption. Hey, if it takes me another fucking year to get 10,000 subscribers, I'd rather just be doing it by telling the truth. Michelle with the $9.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. I appreciate your contribution to the channel. But I'd rather sit here and tell the truth, you know, from the legal documents. I do it like Peter. We read through the legal documents and stick to the facts. And until I can be swayed otherwise in a legal document or a court hearing or anything, then I will change my mind. And believe me, you know, if we're wrong, we will all come together and figure out how it was wrong. You know, we can do that together. I will admit if I am wrong. Absolutely. And we'll learn from that and move on. And then next time when we take on a big case like this and we cover it, we'll learn from that and maybe look at things that are a little bit different. But I'm sorry, I have to stick to the legal documents. That's how I formulate my opinions.
You need to discover it to the other side. It means you need to produce it in discovery to the other side. You have to do that. And that's what the state has a legitimate gripe about. As the Juarez court also observed, if requested by the state during discovery, a defendant intending to offer an alibi must file notice where the defendant claims to have been at the time of the alleged offense and the names and addresses of witnesses whose testimony will support the defendant's alibi. There you go. I still think there's no court that's not going to let Bryan Kohberger take the stand and testify that he was somewhere else. So I think this is outside of Bryan Kohberger's testimony on his own. If you're planning on producing any other evidence that he was somewhere else, you need to produce it, or I think the court could legitimately bar it. Or you can cure this problem with an extension of time. Whenever you do provide this evidence to the state, you have to give them time to do a full evaluation, depose witnesses, look through video, scrutinize it. They have to have time to do that because the state has a right to a fair trial as well, as do all the public, right? We don't want to put menaces back on the street.
Right.
If they in fact did commit the crime. That's why we have to do things the right way. As evidenced by the defendant's July 24th notice of defendant's response to the alibi, the defendant has failed to comply in any fashion with the requirements of the state, the court rule, and the applicable case law. It is important to note that the scheduled October 2nd jury trial is barely more than 2 months away. If the defense intends to rely on alibi, it is essential that they be required to provide prompt notice so the state can fulfill its obligations under Idaho Code to investigate and respond to the notice of alibi. Any further delays will substantially prejudice the state's rights. Similar to the situation in Juarez, the state has no idea how the defendant's notice regarding alibi constitutes an alibi, and as observed above, the state is unable to comply with the rules in the code based on the lack of information in this case. We don't know how this is an alibi at all. And I agree with them. I think it was very vague. It was basically like, we're going to prove the alibi through cross-examination and if the defendant wants to testify. So, I mean, from that perspective, I think it's understandable for the state, or fair and in good faith for the state to say, we don't think he's going to produce anything additional to what we produced, because he said he's going to prove it on cross-examination. He also said direct examination, expert witnesses, and potentially defendant statements. I haven't been saying expert witnesses, but again, so what? What exactly are you going to prove? Where was he? The state has a right to know that. The state also notes, as the United States Supreme Court observed in Taylor v. Illinois, the ease with which an alibi can be fabricated and the state's interest in protecting itself against the 11th hour defense is both obvious and legitimate. Day before trial, they say, "Hup, here we go. Here is the alibi." The adversary system of trial is hardly an end in itself. It is not yet a poker game which players enjoy an absolute right always to conceal their cards until played. It is not that. Okay. It is not that. It's not a hide the ball. It's not a guerrilla warfare situation, not at all. Based on the above, the state respectfully prays the court for an order compelling the defendant to comply in full with Idaho Code 19 and Idaho Rule by filing a notice specifying, again, they're just asking for more specifics, specifying the defendant's, where the defendant claims to have been at the time of the alleged offenses and the names and addresses of the witnesses whose testimony will support that alibi. Given the time constraints, the state prays that the court direct the defendant to comply no later than 10 days from the date of the court's order, and that the state be allowed, pursuant to Idaho Code 19519, to provide the defense with written notice of names and addresses of witnesses who the state intends to rely on to establish the defendant's presence at the scene of the offenses, and any other witnesses to be relied.
Yeah, essentially what's going on is that if you present an alibi, what the state is going to do, and I'm sure you're all smart, is essentially go and talk to those people or go to those places. Or, if you said, hey, I was with Billy, Joe, and Mary on this said night between these said times, well, they're going to go interview them and then talk to them. Can you provide any evidence? Oh, yeah. I mean, look, we were at a bar. I took a bunch of photos of us. Look at the timestamps. They're at whatever, 1 o'clock in the morning. It's essentially what they're going to do, because this is a serious crime. This guy is in prison facing the death penalty. Of course, if they have an alibi, they're going to go check that out, talk to who they are. Or, hey, Mr. Kohberger, we have you, pinned down in this specific area. We think that we know that you went into the house, et cetera, et cetera. You did these crimes. Can you produce anything? Well, yeah, I can. Here's a plane ticket. I was in Hawaii at the time. Look, here's the dates. Here's the hotel I checked into. Here's a receipt from the hotel lobby that I bought a soda in. So there's no way that I could have been there.
On to rebut the testimony of any defendant's alibi witnesses no later than 10 days before trial. So they want deadlines. So what's interesting about this, right? So they demand the alibi. There's a deadline the defense has to respond to. State agrees to an extension. Defendant answers on the last day. A bad answer. So what happens? Instead of it just being over, because that's what the rules say, and you broke the rules in litigation, and if you didn't abide by the deadlines, well, you should lose that right? Wrong. Almost never happens. Incredibly frustrating as a litigator that this happens in cases. So what does the state do? They say, judge, force them to do it and give them 10 days. So that's not just 10 days, because this was filed on the 27th, which was already 3 days after they were due. Then the court has to issue an order whenever the court issues an order. It's already the 31st, which is 7 days after the answers were due, or the alibi was due. And then 10 days from the court orders, another 10 days. So it's at least 17 days if the court's order comes in today. So look, delay, extension. A lot of lawyers do stuff like this, and it is very frustrating. And you can't blame the public in a case like this, the public eye of saying they must not have anything. They're trying to delay. Because now this, again, is at least another 2 or 3 week delay, which seems totally unfair. And again, eventually, I think, could be attributable to the defense. Now, if they don't ever come up with an alibi and they just say, we're going to make some arguments at trial, sure, no big deal. But if later on they come up with some evidence of an alibi, I think the state has a legitimate interest in continuing the case and putting it on the defendant, and therefore waiving his right to a speedy trial. I'll get a couple more questions here before we end the document. Rebel Duck, can he really have an alibi if he has no one to corroborate the alibi? Maybe he's trying to find peeps. So yes, you can have an alibi with no witnesses, right? I was asleep alone in my bed at night at my house. That's an alibi. I'm the only one that can testify to it. Again, sometimes you can have camera or key cards or some other corroborating evidence, but I'm not going to have any witnesses if I live by myself, right? Welcome, Tanya, Julia. Miss Smith, wouldn't the state have the video evidence? They collected all the video footage from the surrounding areas. Yes, I'm not saying video evidence exists, okay? I'm just saying that would be an example of corroborating evidence of an alibi that you were somewhere else at the time the crimes were committed. Alicia, this case is murky on both sides, possibly due to the gag order. I'm not sold on either side. I kind of agree. It's kind of how it feels a little murky on both sides, and I think that could be because of the gag order. Eden, whomever gifted me a membership, thank you kindly. Truly appreciated. I had to leave the room twice, so I missed whom it was. I don't know. I can't tell who it is on my side at this point either because I've been reading this document. But yes, thank you to the amazing members we have and subscribers we have. Daniela, since the prosecution has to prove it was him at trial, why does he have to give an alibi now? He hasn't said his defense is by alibi yet. So there's a difference between having a defense, meaning poking holes, or the state can't prove it, or you have an alibi, and then an affirmative defense. It's something you actually have to prove. Tanya, I love your channel as it's fair, kind, stays with the facts, and why those are important. Keep on educating us. Tanya, you don't ever have to worry about that. The education will not stop. Nana, thank you for subscribing to the shorts. I think John put the link into our Lawyer You Know in Shorts channel, which is a little more laid back, hence the name, not buttoned up in a suit, but in shorts. Get it? Bodie, the Be a Lawyer short clips are funny. Thank you. They were fun to make too. They were fun to make. All right, let's finish this document here. Alternatively, okay, so if you don't compel them to provide the information in 10 days, what is another thing that would suffice for the state? Alternatively, the state prays for an order of this court pursuant to Idaho Code 195194, prohibiting the defendant from presenting any evidence, whether by direct or cross-examination, in support of any claimed alibi other than that from the defendant himself. So even they say there's a carve out for the defendant. I don't think any judge is ever going to do this. They're never going to say you can't ask any questions about an alibi, meaning doesn't this phone ping actually show he was here? You can't do stuff like that. You can't block questions like that. I think even if the judge granted this, the state wouldn't even object to questions like that, number one. Number two, we know that paragraph 4 does not say the judge must. That does not say the judge must bar this testimony or prohibit this testimony. Okay? It says the judge has discretion to. The judge may. The judge may bar this evidence. So it is within the judge's discretion to make this decision. I do not think the judge is going to bar these types of arguments throughout the case. I really just don't see it. And that is why the feet of the state are being held to the fire by this speedy trial right. If they blow it, if they screw it up, the charges could get dismissed or they could be severely hamstrung, like we saw death penalty was taken off the table in Vallo's case because of it. But the rules are a little more lax for a criminal defendant because his life and liberty are on the line. Do you think that's fair? I personally am okay with it to a certain extent, but let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you think that is fair and that is how it should be. Chrissy May loves the Shorts channel. That's awesome. And Kristen, the Shorts channel is awesome. Love you guys for that. Cindy can't find the podcast. It is on iTunes, SoundCloud. It's Lawyer You Know podcast. Opening the Door is like one of the playlists, I think, and series in there. Nicole, so we are recording the first one for the new series, 8-1. Actually, recording 2 this week.
Could
and
happen.
It's all about how
But
the media is affecting case.
What are you going to plea out? He's facing the death penalty. You're going to, put him in life in prison with no death penalty? I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen. Not in this case. They're going to want to go all the way with this.
Trials, cases, high-profile cases, and from now and beyond. And we're going to dig
Yep, you're
deep.
right, Kathy.
We got my dad, JD, Pete, all going to come on different episodes. And this is going to be something that I think we end up speaking on to other organizations to try to help everybody deal with this stuff and understand how it works. Tom, Peter, what a community. Membership gifting, Rebecca Cowboys, Good Vibes, Eden, Nicole Wheeler, Azam, and anyone I may have missed. Sorry, go Bears, Chicago American football team. Yeah, you and the Shabusiness family apparently like the Bears. I don't know if you saw that, but they said go Bears when her dad walked out of the room, out of the courtroom. But thank you, Tom, also for being such a huge supporter of the channel. And Rebecca here shouting out for those members that I gifted. You are welcome. Peter is well worth it. Rebecca is, so we got Bears, we got Cowboys, we got Bucks, all sorts of NFL teams being shouted out. The season is upon us, right? August starts tomorrow. Very interesting. You guys are the best. Asia. If the delay ends up being within the 37-day extension window the judge already allowed, would it still constitute involuntary waiver of speedy trial? No, if they can get it done within that period of time and the defense can argue that's plenty of time for the state to respond and do all of this, then there's not going to be a continuance.
So, Lady Lost Sandra says, you and Peter think so much alike. When he posted the Lori case, I was so upset. But as I said, the media is the extensive jury. Absolutely. Thanks for the $5 super chat. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thanks for the support of the channel.
There's not going to be a speedy trial issue. Azam, Peter, if he lives alone, like you said, I think he does. I was giving examples. I don't know the details that we don't know publicly. I don't know privately. How can he convince the jury? The only channel I set an alarm to, LOL, thank you. And thank you, John. So again, just like Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, sometimes you get up there on the stand and you try to convince the jury. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Alec Murdoch, same thing. So maybe he's going to get on the stand and he thinks he's going to convince the jury. Maybe he's believable. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe they'll call it on that. At the end of the day, credibility of witnesses is the biggest part of the trial, and credibility of the parties becomes the biggest part of the trial. Alicia Joe, I'm showing appreciation for Peter. Thanks for the breakdown. Love the content and for educating us. Thank you so much, Alicia.
I'm not doing a thing with Tyler Feller.
Thanks for the update. Recovering from a torn rotator cuff and re-binging all of your previous videos and shorts. Lori Daybell, justice served. Yes. Thank you, Ms. Escobar.
No thanks.
Did you have surgery? If so, I have heard a lot of good results, or I've seen, I should say, in clients and friends that have gotten this surgery done. A lot of good results. You just got to do the PT. So hang in there and keep pushing hard.
I disagree.
Jerry, looking for a new pickleball paddle. Do you have any suggestions? I have a Hula.
Fly with that,
which is the Ben Johns paddle. I like the extended handle on it, and I like the feel of it, the spin, the control that you have. But a lot of people have the Selkirks, I think it is, and I've been looking at maybe getting one of those too, like to have a power one just to try it out. But I don't know. Just me. John needs his own emoji. I think he's going to be in some more of the shorts. More people are going to be in the shorts. You saw JD, you saw Pete in them, so we're going to have more people involved in the shorts from around the office
bringing that
as well.
guy on my show.
Shannon, an innocent person would flash an alibi immediately. I don't like saying like all innocent people do this or all guilty people do that because I've seen it all across the spectrum stuff you would not expect for people that are innocent, people that are guilty.
All right.
So I don't know, but that is what a lot of people are saying, and I think that's fine if you want to say that. But I also think if he says, I was asleep in bed by myself, that's not really something you produce when an alibi is demanded. So I can understand that kind of from both sides as well. Other things coming up. The second motion to stay that Kohberger's team filed. I'm going to bring my dad on a video later this week. We're going to talk more about that, talk more about how it affects speedy trial and things like that. Again, make sure you subscribe to the Shorts channel, and Lori Vallow's sentencing video coming tonight. All right, I'm going to take 2 or 3 more questions here. I see a lot of you subscribing to the Shorts. I can't thank you enough. It's always fun to, grow something a little bit more fun and laid back, not as serious as this channel. I see some Dolphins fans, some Steelers fans in the chat. Oh, sorry. Racquetball is now pickleball. Did they say racquetball or no? They said pickleball, I think. You asked, Lisa. We had one last year. A girl after my own color. It's like the army green color. And it's quite heavy topics on here as well.
All right, we're going to can that video. I got one more with Peter and his dad, and they're going to talk about the Kohberger stay. Let's watch through this, see what Peter had to say. Aquaman.
Back into another episode here, breaking down some Kohberger documents that were filed over the last week, and his team wants another stay. They are saying there is another issue potentially with the grand jury proceedings, not just that they
you're welcome.
used the wrong burden.
You all just became a member of the channel. You can go on my homepage, scroll all the way down, and all my members only content is there. I need to do a members only video. I'll probably do one tomorrow morning, maybe on my walk tomorrow. I'll do another live. I did that last time. Just our members only stuff is just very light, casual, laid back, just kind of hanging out kind of stuff. Maybe we'll do one tomorrow morning. Okay, let's hear what Peter had to say.
Of proof, but there were other problems. And today we're going to talk about potentially what those other problems are. We are going to read through this second motion to stay. And to help me do that today, I am bringing on my dad. Hello, Dad. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well. Let's jump into this document. You guys hit that like button. If you haven't already, for bringing Big George on, hit that like button for breaking down these Kohberger docs. If this is still a case you all are interested in, and we will continue to cover it. So first things first, second motion to stay proceedings. We know they already had another one, and the judge stayed the proceedings 37 days, extending the defendant's speedy trial period. The defendant agreed to it as not a issue he can raise when they pass the 6-month mark. So that's kind of where we stand for now on that. The state has a problem with it. The state has kind of objected to the judge using it as kind of a partial waiver of speedy trial, even though that's not what the defense said. Let's see if they get another one, because it seems like that's exactly what they're asking for, which the state said would happen. So through his attorneys, he says Idaho Code 2213 provides for a stay of proceedings upon verified allegations of failure of Title II of the Idaho Code. Filed in conjunction with this motion, but under seal, is a sworn affidavit alleging a failure of Title II of the Idaho Code. So something has been filed under seal in this case, which is an affidavit. Dad, what do you think's in that affidavit?
Well, affidavit, I'll bet that she saw something or talked to a potential grand juror or talked to a grand juror, asked that grand juror some questions about the questionnaire they filled out. Maybe got some information from that grand juror that says, well, no, I don't remember that question on the questionnaire, or I didn't send it in 10 days ahead of time, or she went through the list here that you can see in the second paragraph.
Well, we're going to get to the list, but
if she went through that with a grand juror and she's doing an affidavit regarding that.
So basically, the affidavit's under seal, so we don't know exactly what's in it. But based on what we're about to read, the affidavit attached that is under seal is the specific problem that the defense found when they went through all the grand jury testimony, grand jury materials, questionnaires, jury selection, jury answers. They have all of that now. They've gone through all of that, and they have filed the issue they have found under seal. So what is that issue? What is it in the groupings of? Well, let's take a look at the rest of the motion here to give us an idea as to what they focused on the second time around. Title II provides statutory authority and requirement for convening trial juries or grand juries. Mr. Kohberger alleges failure of full compliance with Idaho Code 2208. This statute states that individuals must be randomly drawn from a county jury list, and that the jury commissioner shall draw a requisite number of qualified jurors for one or more panels or for a grand jury. The statute further requires, upon receipt of the direction and in a manner prescribed by the court, the jury commission shall publicly draw at random by use of a manual, mechanical, or automated system from the county jury list the number of prospective jurors specified. The number of potential jurors appearing for a potential selection impacted the seating of grand jury that heard the case. Based upon review of the grand jury convening process, apparent failure occurred. So based on that paragraph, what are some of the issues that could be in this affidavit that they're going to argue necessitates another stay?
Well, I mean, we're obviously speculating.
Yeah.
But we're talking about, for instance, they have to be selected at random using a manual, mechanical, or automated system. Well, let's just say they used a computer. And let's say they're arguing that a computer is not an automated system because it's not this or it's not that. Or let's say they had some guy sitting in a back room randomly pulling names out of a hat. Is that a manual or a mechanical system? I don't know. But they could throw in all sorts of little technical differences and saying, look, the statute didn't say computers. The statute didn't say draw names out of a hat. The statute didn't say exactly what it is this county particularly did with the list. The statute, they can go through the list. And another interesting thing that they're not really pinning themselves down with, when they say the process had an apparent failure occurred. So they don't even say that a failure did occur. they're saying was an apparent failure. So they're trying to hedge their bets, and I think they're trying to walk a tightrope so that they don't get caught lying in this motion, and they say it's apparent, not that it actually happened.
Idaho Code 22083 requires that the qualification questionnaire from a form must be completed and returned to the clerk or the jury commissioner within 10 days from the date of mailing. The qualification questionnaire form shall elicit the name, address, or residence and age of the prospective juror, and whether the prospective juror A is a citizen of the United States and a resident of the county, B is able to read, speak, and understand the English language, C has any disability impairing his capacity to render satisfactory jury service, and D has lost the right to serve on a jury because of a felony criminal conviction as provided by Section 3, Article 6 of the Constitution of the state of Idaho, and who has not been restored to the rights of citizenship pursuant to Section 18310 Idaho Code or other applicable law. The qualification questionnaire form shall contain the prospective juror's declaration that his responses are true to the best of his knowledge and his acknowledgement that a willful misrepresentation of a material fact may be punished as a misdemeanor. Based upon review of the grand jury materials and process, it appears a failure has occurred. So this one specifically is with qualifications of the jury. Either they weren't from this county, they weren't able to read or speak or understand the English language, they have a disability impairing their capacity to render satisfactory service, or a felon got on the grand jury. So this one is more obvious as to what the problem could have been. A juror got on this grand jury, they were not qualified to be on this grand jury, and they rendered this verdict.
Well,
right?
there could be another angle on this.
Okay.
It could be that they're qualified, but the questionnaire was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a qualified juror, but the clerk sent out a questionnaire that
And
did
it wasn't
not have
returned
all
within
these
the
questions.
10 days.
Right. Or it could be the 10 days, because these two paragraphs have two totally different angles that they're coming after this grand jury. Number one, you have the selection process. That's the first paragraph. And the second paragraph is the qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
So they're attacking everything, which we understand that they're going to do. But again, this one could be a questionnaire problem. It could be a 10-day problem, or it could actually be a disqualified juror problem.
And it makes sense that the affidavit was filed under seal because the grand jury names and their identification has all been under seal the entire time. So if they were going to give an affidavit that says John Smith was disqualified because he was a felon, that has to be under seal and confidential because they are not letting the names of the grand jurors out. And I don't expect that to change. So we're never probably going to see this affidavit, maybe after the case is over, but we're never going to see this affidavit as part of this litigation. But that makes sense as to why it is filed under seal. And this is giving some examples of what potentially could have gone wrong. And again, based on that last sentence, based upon review of the grand jury materials. So they have received them, reviewed them, and they have another issue. Further, other irregularity exists within the grand jury process, and further investigation is necessary to determine the impact, if any, in the convening of this grand jury. Because of the apparent failure of compliance with Title II, Mr. Kohberger respectfully requests a stay of proceedings while further investigating the opportunity to be heard occurs. So what do you think about that? Requesting another stay to do further investigation into these grand jury proceedings, knowing that the judge has already granted one stay of the speedy trial period, 37 days. They have not continued the trial. They have not stayed depositions and motions and everything going on in the case. They are only staying the tolling of the speedy trial period. So what do you think about the fact that they're asking for yet another stay?
Well, it all depends on how careful this judge is going to be in trying to avoid any appellate issues. And it could be that this judge is going to say to himself, look, there's nothing here. There's never been a grand jury that's been thrown out. There's never been a grand jury indictment thrown out for these technicalities. However, in order to avoid this issue as for appellate reasons, I'll go ahead and give them some time to investigate this and see what they can turn up. Again, it's how careful and conservative that judge is going to be.
You're not saying that that's never happened. You're saying the judge may think that that's never happened in this county.
I have never seen a jury totally thrown out because of a technical. I'm saying they're all qualified. I'm saying, let's say they used a computer versus, the technical aspects of this versus a disqualified juror. Those are two different ways to look at this. Disqualified grand juror, yes, that's an issue.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And
because there are multiple issues here, it absolutely could be thrown out if he finds one of these issues. You're just saying one of the technicalities, like, it was turned in 11 days later instead of 10 days later. They're not going to redo the whole process because of that.
Right. And so I think that's what I'm saying. This judge, if he wants to be conservative and careful, he's going to give them a stay in order to investigate this.
So one of the big arguments back and forth between the state and the defense is whether or not this stay that's already occurred is a full waiver. What's your experience as far as defendants who are demanding speedy trial, but also asking for stays because of delays by the state? They were saying the delay or the state was blocking or objecting to certain grand jury materials. Judge and the state, they ended up agreeing, okay, you can get basically everything. And because of that, they allowed some extra time. What are your thoughts around that? Whether or not it's fair to grant stays that seem like partial waivers of speedy trial, but they don't actually waive the speedy trial. They're still demanding it. What are your thoughts on that?
Happens all the time. It's very regular. The appellate courts recognize the fact that you can give a 15-day and then speedy trial starts running again. In this case, I think it was 37?
Yeah, so far.
So 37 days. After the 37 days, it starts running again. So it's very common. And I think it's going to happen in this case again, if this judge is being very careful to make sure he doesn't have an appellate issue.
And I think the judge could also just say, we built in enough time for you to investigate this issue in the 37-day extension that we've already given or stay that we've already given. I think that's possible. But in an abundance of caution, you always want to give the defendant every benefit of the doubt you can, again, to prevent any major appellate issues from popping up. But to me, this doesn't seem like some smoking gun or something that they found in the grand jury proceedings, number one. Number two, it also doesn't seem like Kohberger's team is worried about the judge giving a stay and having a speedy trial issue, since in the last one, the judge's order was very specific, was very, very particular about how the defense agrees this is not a waiver of speedy trial, but they also will not file a motion to dismiss the grand jury indictment for lack of speedy trial because they're agreeing on this 37-day stay. So as long as it's documented appropriately.
And that's the problem, is that affidavit. Is there a basis for this stay? We really don't know. Again, if they have a specific juror that they're pointing to and saying, this juror is not qualified, this juror didn't fill it out right, this juror lied on the form, then the judge can have a hearing, probably in camera. He's going to have that hearing and question that juror to see if there's a basis for what the defense is saying. If they have no basis, if even the affidavit, if you assume everything in the affidavit is true, doesn't give them a basis, I don't think the judge is going to grant it. There's got to be something in that affidavit that, if true, would give them a basis for the stay.
Yeah, I really think that in this situation, as we continue to look at this case, this is something that the defense is going to continue to try to do to gain more time so that they can prepare for this trial, because the state is trying to hold their feet to the fire basically with this October date or with this 6-month speedy trial period. The defense continues to find issues or things they believe are issues, and they need more time to investigate, especially with the grand jury and the delay in getting them the grand jury documents. So it seems like, again, I've felt like it's going to be impossible for this case to go to trial on October 2nd.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, but to answer the ultimate question, let's say there was a disqualified juror on there. Let's say there was a felon that got on there that should have been able to render a grand jury indictment. Have you ever seen cases that grand jury indictments are dismissed based on some kind of technicality or some, disqualified juror, and then it goes back and now they're not indicted because they changed out that one jury or juror?
Oh, never. In fact, I've seen cases where they throw it out, and on the same day, they take it to a grand jury that's sitting and they get a new indictment, and they don't release the guy because the indictment's thrown out. He still stays in jail. So this is just a delaying tactic. Frankly, it's not going to matter in the long run.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you. Oh, I was just saying, I was letting everybody know that I just reached out to Brian Enton via Twitter to try to get him on for an interview on the show. Not sure what's going to happen. Not sure what his contractual agreements are, but I thought it'd be a great time to do that while we're watching Peter, because Peter won't respond to me. I'm just kidding, Peter. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I can get him on the show for 30 minutes to an hour. Again, I don't know what his contractual agreements are with News Nation, but maybe I can get him on and talk about, his boots on the ground investigation in Idaho. I would love to hear, what he saw, what things that really, might have heightened his, heighten his senses when he was around there, get a feel for the community, get a feel for the people in and around that area. Because he was on the heart of the area when it all started to happen. So we'll see what happens. He has tweeted at me before. He's responded to me via Twitter, but yeah, you never know. You never know. All right, let's finish this up, and then we're gonna wrap up the streamy deemy.
It's not going to make a difference.
I mean, the only thing that could matter, I guess, is it could give him a new 6-month speedy trial period if it gets dismissed and he's reindicted, and it starts the clock from that arraignment after that indictment or preliminary hearing. But yeah, at the end of the day, if any of these arguments work and the grand jury indictment gets dismissed, nothing we have seen so far would make us think that a grand jury would come up with a different verdict being presented with the same facts, even under a different burden potentially, if this was done again in the future. And I think that's the ultimate question a lot of people have.
And you can't, people sit out there and talk about playing the game in the process. You cannot blame these lawyers. A man's life is at stake, and you want to make sure that every avenue is, before you take a man's life, every avenue should be tried. And so I don't blame these lawyers for doing everything they can to try to protect his constitutional rights, because again, they have filed for a death penalty in this case. So a man's life is at stake.
Yeah, I agree, but I also do think there is a line. I'm not sure if we would say the line is in the same spot, but I think you would too. You don't file frivolous motions that are going to lose,
frivolous, no.
or make arguments that are not even worth making, not even protecting the record, not even appellate issue if you win. But yeah, I agree. Obviously, death is different. We've talked about it a bunch, and we will continue to as we go along in this case. Dad, thank you so much for coming on. Hit that like button on the way out, everybody. Let me know what you thought in the comments. I appreciate everybody joining me. Until next time, we're out of here.
All right, that's Peter Tregos. Peter Tregos. Oh boy. That's it. This may conclude our broadcast. That's all I got. That's all I got on the table. Are you Newman? You're a new member. Did you sign up for a membership? But we'll recognize you being a new member. But thank you. Thanks for becoming a member. All right, folks, we're at just about an hour and a half. Lori says, "Hey, Brian, we share something I wish we did not." Well, what is that? That's news to me. Let's find out what the news is. That we share something I wish we did not. This should be interesting. Let's wait and see what the answer is. And if anybody has any questions, let's see. Lori says, "My brother also took his own life. Almost emailed you about it, but I didn't want to bombard you." Well, Lori, I'm sorry for your loss. Suicide is it's not a good thing. It affects many, many things, and affects many, many people around them. So I'm sorry. But thank you for sharing, and I hope that you're healing. It takes a very long time. And those, that sting will always be there. I get it. All right. I think we're gonna wrap this one up. I'm gonna get some rest. Am I streaming too much? Let me know in the comments. Am I streaming too much? Is there no anticipation for my streams? Let me know in the comments. Throw a 1 up if I'm streaming too much, or a 2 if I should just keep doing the same schedule that I've been doing. I'll wait for you all to answer. It's okay, and you can be honest. If you feel like I'm streaming too much, put a 1. If you think that I'm not and you want me to keep going on the same schedule, put a 2. And it's okay. 1s are okay. 1s are okay. I'm just trying to get a feel. Because I feel like I'm streaming too much. And that's why not a lot of people come to the stream, because there's no anticipation. So I don't know if I should peel back a little bit and maybe do a couple of nights where I just work on just regular content to put videos out there. But I noticed the streams are just getting smaller and smaller. And I've noticed like Tanya's channel, her streams are getting really small too. And I get it. It's summertime. People are out. They're doing stuff. I'm not really burnt out. I just feel like I'm burning people out, because you can get burnt out. Too many replays, not enough lives. I do lives every night of the week, dude. I do lives every night of the week. And then I drop my replays like a week later. And I don't want to keep talking about it, but there's a reason why I do it. It jams that algorithm again. And what I might do is I might start just downloading up on my replay channel and try to get that channel going and do some lives over there and get that channel monetized. So I have just a replay channel, and then maybe I just drop clips and stuff like that over here. Yeah, people vacationing. Pam, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Thanks, I appreciate it. Well, we appreciate you being here. It may be. It's burnt out. That's why I've been doing other stuff, but it's like weird. No one is interested in that. No one is interested in the other stuff. I think you're all missing out on that Rex Human stuff. This is gonna be like, this guy goes down, could be one of the most prolific serial killers of all time. That's big stuff. Yeah, it was a good crowd tonight. There were a lot of people in here, almost 200 at one point. It's pretty good. All right, I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna get some rest. I got a busy day tomorrow. Probably work on some content. Maybe I'll do a members only stream. Janet says, I like when streamers talk to people, but it all depends on who they're talking to. Also, new cases or topics. Yeah, I want this to be like a guest channel, because it makes it more for a compelling stream. I love the list streams too. Great. Well, we'll keep doing that. You're on vacation and you're watching? Wow. Haley's on vacation and watching. You're a beast. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Lori's gonna email me. Okay. All right. We'll waste 30 more seconds and then we'll wrap this up. And then we're gonna go. I know. I wish we had more. Everybody's gone. All my moderators are gone. Everybody's gone. I lost all my moderators. AZ's gone. Laura's gone. Chosen Rosen's gone. They're all gone. Everybody left me. Everybody left me. Candy, she's gone. Everybody's gone. I'm going to have to start putting some feelers out and get some new moderators. Dr. Bob is here. Victorine's always here. They've been really great. I get it. People have life. Life comes up. I'm not holding anything against them. When I say that they're gone, I'm just joking around. Everybody gets busy. Lives change. People come and go. It's just the nature of the business. I know, Dr. Bob. I was just joking. It's just the nature of the business. It's how this YouTube thing goes. I don't know where they went. Everybody's just busy. You know, it's family time. Some of them have kids. I just hope I didn't do anything to turn any of them away. Summer's here. She's a mod. Bringing in the scams. So I don't know. I think that's going to be it. I think we're going to go. We're going to go. I'm tired. I always say that, and then I shut down and I get wired and stay wide awake. All right. Y'all be good. I don't know. Maybe I'll fire something up tomorrow. Maybe I'll take tomorrow off. Maybe I'll just do a members. Maybe I'll just do a members only tomorrow. I'll do a members only tomorrow night. We can just hang out. Do something like that. Something different. Everybody's leaving. All right. Y'all have a good night. Talk to you all soon. Be good. Be well. Live long and prosper. I'm out of here. Oh, I haven't done one of these in a while.
Steven.
Or one of these.
You are fake news.
Or this.
Bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, bing.
All right. Goodbye.